Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the first part of What If Deku Had Psychokinesis. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 1, The Origin of Heroes. And that is all we can report as of now. While the main threat has been neutralized, it seems that the heroes on scene are giving the area a full screening. They want to be absolutely sure that no villains are still in hiding after their base was raided just a few hours ago. Sources say, considering the size of the hideout, this could take them well into the night and possibly into the morning. We can expect a brief press conference in a few hours after the heroes have done their initial sweep. There is also a strong possibility that a member of GRI. With a sigh, a small boy watched as his older sister clicked the remote to turn off the TV and leaned back into her chair, a rather grumpy look on her face. Pulling out her phone, she scrolled for a few seconds before putting it to her ear. Hey. Yeah, about tonight? Oh, you're watching the news too, huh? Yeah, looks like we'll have to reschedule. Yeah, it's a little annoying. Honestly, if they had told me the place was as big as the news is saying, we could have just made our plans on another day to begin with. Of course, he was trying not to worry me. He's my dad, you think I don't have him figured out? The boy smiled when his sister's eye swept over him. He knew the topic between his sister and boyfriend. Was it boyfriend? She got really mad when Dad had said that. Like super scary. But he knew they were talking about him now. Nah, we probably could use Dad's gym instead, but I don't want Mom thinking I was slacking off looking after Toshi. We can get our reps in tomorrow. Maybe add a mile or two to our jog or something. Dad's training plan does have stuff in it for sick days and such. Yeah, I know entrance exams are only 2 months away. We will be fine. You really need to stop worrying so much. Toshi watched as his sister suddenly went a little stiff, a faint pink flush forming on her cheeks. She absently reached up with her free hand and scratched the horn that grew above her brow. Yeah, I'm sure it'd be fine for us to go grab a bite at the mall after our training. I'd need a chance to freshen up first, of course. His sister's eyes suddenly hardened. She pulled her phone back and was looking at it like it had suddenly said something very, very dumb. Toshi always liked this part. It was better when the boy was about to get it in person, but it was still fun to watch. If I need a shower, you can just spray me down? Really? I'm not a car. I swear sometimes you can be so stupid. You know that? Toshi giggled. His sister seemed to remember he was in the same room as him and decided to end her call. Look, we can talk about your little idea later. I need to get my brother to sleep anyway. Let him talk me into staying up late in case Mom and Dad get home. No, I want you to think about why what you just said was dumb. Good night, Kuta. With a grunt, his sister hung up and dropped the phone onto the couch before mumbling to herself, spray me down, I swear he can be such a moron. You don't invite a girl to the mall and then say you'd spray her down if she's worried she'd smell after training all morning. Toshi laughed again. His sister was always funny when she mumbled like that. She sounded so much like Daddy. And you, mister, Toshi gasped, suddenly having her undivided attention, it's way past your bedtime. Toshi shook his head. No, I want to see Mommy and Daddy first. Toshi climbed out of the large couch and tried to scramble away, but his sister effortlessly caught him and lifted him up. Toshi puffed his cheeks at how unfair it was that his big sister was, well, bigger than him. Of course, he had his own ways of fighting back. Unfortunately, his sister also knew about his ways and quickly put a stop to him with a look. You blow fire into my face and you bet I'm gonna let Mom and Dad know who ate the rest of the cookies out of the jar. Toshi's cheeks deflated. But that's tattling. You better believe it is. Now let's go. Not long afterwards, Toshi was tucked into his bed, with his sister making sure nothing was going to pop out of the closet, or from under his bed. Toshi looked over at a small line of books on his shelf. Many were fantasy stories that either his mom or dad would read to him before bed. There were a few bio, books about his parents that he enjoyed getting to listen to too. Though mostly it was to see the funny faces his parents would make whenever the books got something really, really wrong. "Will you read me a story?" Sure. You were being read this one, right? About the young squire and his merry band going off to fight the demon lord?" Toshi shook his head. "Dad's reading me that one. He likes it too. We are reading it together." His sister blinked before a soft laugh escaped her. That explains his sudden interest in medieval stuff. "Okay, what do you want to hear then?" Toshi thought about it, his finger resting under his bottom lip as he did. "Tell me one about mommy and daddy." "Okay, what do you want to hear?" she asked as she picked through some of the books, reading off their titles as she skimmed their contents. "The Great Ocean Adventure," "Attack of the Tree People," "Floating Horror." "The Day There Was No Green." Man, some of these are just so stupid. Whoever they have writing them needs to learn how to fact check. That's why Daddy likes them. He likes pointing out the stuff that's wrong. His sister smiled. "That's easy, just point at the book." "Is that why Mommy and Daddy were laughing so much last night? That new documentary." "Yeah, that. They were watching it and it seemed really funny." "Was it wrong too?" His sister laughed. "Oh boy, it was. The true origin story of the number one ranked heroes. They weren't even close." Toshi's eyes sparked. "Oh, tell me that one." "We don't have a book of that story yet though." No. Tell me the true story about how Mom and Dad became heroes." "I haven't heard that story yet." "Tell me that one, Eri-chan." Eri smiled and sat down on the edge of Toshi's bed. "Oh, you sure you want to know that one? It's not just action like your other stories." "Huh? But didn't Mom and Dad get into lots of fights with villains when they were in school?" "Dad has said so." "Oh sure, but if you want the origin story you'd better be ready for some icky romance. Like hand-holding and even kissing." Eri made sure to sound as aghast as possible as she said that. Toshi scrunched up his face. "EW. Not gross stuff." Eri smiled and ruffled his hair, but before she could come up with a different story to tell him, Toshi looked up at her. But, I still want to hear it. Just maybe warn me before we get to the icky parts." Eri nodded. "Okay, then. The origin of the number one heroes Deku and Uraraka. Heroes of Green Tea Rescue." There were 2 days that Izuku Midoriya remembered from his childhood with crystal clear clarity. The first was one of the happiest days he could remember. It was the day he discovered that he had a quirk. It had been a simple enough day to start with. He had been watching some of his favorite All Might videos when he had accidentally knocked one of his action figures off the desk in his excitement. In a panic, he tried to grab the falling toy but missed. However, before it hit the ground the toy slowed before coming to a stop. Izuku looked around, thinking his mother had stopped the toy herself, but he was alone. Looking back down, Izuku bent forward and reached out. Slowly the toy rose upward and floated just above the palm of his hand. Izuku sat in his chair, just looking at the toy, before his excitement could no longer be contained. "Mom!" At her son's cry, Inko rushed into his room. "Izuku, honey, what's wrong?" She stopped and stood transfixed in the doorway, watching as her son turned and showed her the floating toy in front of him. "Mom, I have a quirk. It's just like yours, too." After a warm hug and much praise, Inko made Izuku his favorite dinner to celebrate. The next day too seemed to continue Izuku's good fortune. Inko had taken Izuku to see a doctor so that they could have his quirk diagnosed and registered. There they learned from the doctor that Izuku's quirk was in fact a slight mutation of his mother's, and not a one-to-one inheritance as was more common. While both mother and child were sitting in the exam room, the doctor had asked what Inko's quirk was exactly. She explained she could attract small objects to herself. The doctor nodded. Your son has demonstrated that not only is he able to pull objects towards himself, but push them away, and keep them in a levitated state telekinetically. As his quirk is able to perform different actions than yours, I believe we should treat it as a mutation, rather than a simple strengthened inheritance. As such, I will be documenting it with a new name. Psychokinesis. After the visit, Izuku ran off towards the playground at the park where he hoped his friend Katsuki would be. He wanted to show off his quirk. Now Katsuki wasn't the only one with an amazing power. He even spent most of the car ride home learning how to say the name right. Hurrying up the path, he soon was able to pick out Katsuki's distinct voice. When he finally came to the playground, he came to a sudden stop. Katsuki and two of his other friends were chasing after another boy, laughing as they did. It was obvious that the boy was running scared before he tripped and landed on the ground in a tangled mess. Katsuki and the others slowed to a stop, smiling wickedly as they slowly advanced on the fallen boy. Kaken? What's going on? Katsuki turned and looked over at Izuku. Oh, it's just you, Deku. Just stay over there for now. I'm gonna teach this guy a lesson. Lesson? Katsuki smirked as he cracked his knuckles, puffs of smoke and sparks crackled with each pop. He thought he'd try and show off. Said his quirk was better than mine. Katsuki was now standing over the boy, looking down on him cruelly, but before he could do anything else, a small pebble bounced off the side of his head. There wasn't enough force behind it to really do anything, but it was enough to get his attention. Slowly he and the other boys turned towards where the stone had come from. Izuku. Izuku stood there, shaking, hands outstretched. Face scrunched up in concentration. A few more small stones floated around him. He looked over at his friend. Stop it, Kaken. Katsuki blinked a few times before reaching down and picking up the small stone Izuku had thrown at him. He looked at it for a few seconds before he started to laugh. You finally get a quirk, and that's it? Deku, anyone can throw rocks. See? Before Izuku understood what was coming, Katsuki reared back and hurled the stone right back at him, hitting him square in the face. The sudden pain made him lose his concentration and the green glow around the other stones he had been holding up vanished. Each one fell back to the ground as Izuku reached up to hold his nose. Katsuki took that opportunity to strike, charging at Izuku and pushing him down. The other boys with Katsuki soon followed their leader, helping him beat some sense into Izuku. The boy who had been chased before quickly got up and ran away, thankful that someone else now was Katsuki's target. It was this day, one of the lowest that he could remember, that Izuku learned something. All men are not created equal. You really are living up to your name, Deku. You finally get a quirk and it's as worthless as you are. Those words and that lesson would be drilled into Izuku, time after time. And if Izuku ever started to forget, Katsuki would always be there to remind him. Even now, 10 years later. In the same park. In the same playground. Izuku gasped and wheezed on the ground, desperately trying to catch his breath after getting knocked to the ground. Katsuki stood over him, hands still smoking from the explosion he had set off into Izuku's stomach. Of all the luck. Why'd I have to run into Kaken? Why me? Katsuki let out a laugh. It's good you came by when you did, Deku. Been feeling a little stressed out these past few days and I really needed to cut loose. You make such a great punching bag, I couldn't resist. One of Katsuki's lackeys gave Izuku's shuddering form a quick poke with his foot. Bakugou here just got done with his mock exams, you know. You should be happy to be there for him to let off some steam. So I was just a convenient target, then. Izuku looked past the group as he tried to get to his knees. Trying to find something, anything, in his range that he might be able to grab with his quirk to defend himself. However, Katsuki immediately saw the faint green glow that always formed around Izuku when he really started to push his quirk. His hands let loose a few more explosions over Izuku's head, and the faint glow vanished as he fell back to the ground. Careful there, Deku. I almost thought you were gonna try and fight back. Just take your lumps and be happy I'm already done with you. When Katsuki was sure Izuku had indeed given up, he motioned to his followers to come with him. "Come on. Let's go find an arcade or something. Might as well do something with the day before school starts tomorrow." Still laughing amongst themselves, Izuku stayed lying on the ground, listening as their laughter faded further and further away before he dared to try and sit up. He groaned softly, nursing his battered front. Tentatively, he reached up and began to dust himself off, wincing at the pain in his chest caused by raising his arms. Still, could be worse, I guess. Shirt's not so burned I can't play it off as an accident of some kind if Mom asks. Could just say I had a fall. Izuku was so preoccupied trying to remove the soot and dirt from himself he didn't notice a quickened set of footsteps coming up to him. Nor did he notice as someone stopped right by him. But he did finally notice when she spoke. "Are you okay?" Earlier that day. To say Ochako was nervous would be the understatement of the century. It had only been a little while ago that she had said goodbye to her parents after they had finished helping her unpack all her things into her new apartment. Just that phrase alone was such a foreign thought, she was still trying to wrap her head around it. It was only a week ago that her dad told her the news. A friend that he had worked with on a construction job knew of an apartment that had just opened for students, and he would be able to get them a great deal on it. What's more, it was close enough for anyone living there to be able to attend UA with ease. Ochako had always planned, when the time came, to be ready to live by herself if she was able to make it into UA, but for it to suddenly be happening already was a lot to take in. And there was always the chance she wouldn't be able to pass the entrance exam anyway when the time came. But, if she was going to make her dream come true, become a hero and ensure her parents would be able to live happily, she couldn't let such an opportunity pass her by. So, after talking to her parents, they all agreed to jump on the opening. And with a flurry of leases and school transfer paperwork, she was now in her very own place. Alone. She wasn't afraid, of course. Even if her father hadn't done extensive research of the area to make sure it didn't have any scary surprises, she was sure she'd be able to handle it. She just wasn't used to the silence, was all. Right, what do I do now? Her eyes turned towards her kitchen. Still too early for dinner, so I might as well pass the time. Walking around, she found her new school uniform hanging, ready to be worn tomorrow on her first day at her new school. Maybe a walk will put my mind at ease. Get a good sense of the area. Maybe there are some places students wanting to get into UA train around here. I'm this close, might as well take full advantage of it. With a smile, Ochako left to see what she could find. The area was nice, with many small thrift stores and more than a few grocery stores for her to choose from. She was sure to make a note of which ones had the better deals and sales. More than once she spotted a hero out on patrol. It was nice to know that this area was being kept safe. Course, it did make sense. This close to UA, there had to be plenty of heroes, teachers, and students working on their internships. What villains in their right mind would want to cause trouble around here? It's not a bad place to live, honestly, she thought to herself. Continuing to walk around, Ochako soon found herself at the entrance to her new school. Absently, she watched as faculty hurried to and fro, getting the place ready for the start of the new school year. Aldera Junior High, huh? I hope I make some friends here. Wonder if anyone else here is gonna try for UA after the year is done? Ochako pulled her phone out and checked the time. I guess I've wasted enough time now. Actually, it's probably a good idea if I turn in early tonight anyway. I'd hate to oversleep on my first day. As she made her way back, she passed through a small park, but paid little mind to the area. She was too busy thinking of what she would be making for herself tonight, and if it would be okay to have some of the mochi her parents had left her. I mean, I'm on my own now. I could probably have just the mochi for dinner. However, before she exited the park she heard a very distinct popping sound followed by some yells. Is someone setting off fireworks? There was another pop and another yell, but this time, she could tell it wasn't a yell of excitement. It sounded like someone had gotten hurt. Turning towards the sound, she rushed forward, phone in hand, ready to call an ambulance if needed. However, when she reached the source, she did not arrive to what she had expected. In a small clearing, by a set of swings, stood a group of boys. Two were standing behind a tall blonde laughing and pointing at something. The blonde had a menacing look to him, and he was yelling something, but Ochako couldn't hear him over the continued popping sounds echoing around. Ochako was shocked to finally see the source of the noise. The boy's hands were sparking and popping with small explosions. What a crazy quirk. He should be more careful or he could hurt. Oh. Ochako's thoughts skidded to a sudden halt as she took in the rest of the scene before her. Not too far away from the exploding boy, there was another boy who was lying on the ground, clutching his stomach and gasping for breath. When the boy on the ground moved to get up, the blonde's hands exploded violently. He didn't hit anything with the explosions, but the smaller boy immediately fell back down to the ground, curling up. I should be helping him, right? Ochako wanted to move, but she found herself seemingly nailed to her spot. Out of sight and more importantly, out of range of the rather terrifying boy. After a little while, after it was clear the boy wasn't going to get back up, the blonde and his group walked away, laughing loudly as they went. Ochako guiltily waited till she couldn't hear them anymore before she finally moved. She hurried towards the boy, who by now was sitting up and tentatively dusting himself off. Are you okay? Ochako wanted to kick herself. Of course he wasn't okay. She hadn't seen the start of whatever that blonde had done, but the singe marks on his stomach, and scuffed up knees and elbows, told her the whole story. And you just hit away while that jerk terrorized him while he lay defenseless. Nice work. I'm sure 13 would wait for the danger to pass before acting too, Ochako thought to herself in disgust. The boy gave a startled jerk before looking up at her. His face was still covered in some dirt, most sticking to his cheeks where she could tell he had been crying. Do you need help? I could call an ambulance? Or the police? The boy just looked up at her blankly for a bit before shaking his head. No. I'm okay. The heck you are. You look terrible. Do you need help standing? Ochako reached out her hand for him to take. The boy looked at her hand, then back at her. They both stayed like that for a few more moments before slowly, timidly, the boy reached out and took her hand. With a gentle tug, Ochako helped the boy up. Now standing, he went back to dusting himself off, and wiping away the dirt on his face. Ochako stood by, not really sure what she could do. Or should be doing. After he was done, the boy turned and for a second seemed surprised she was still standing next to him. He smiled, but Ochako could see it was a fake. His eyes were dull. And fresh tears were already starting to form. Thank you for checking on me. I should be getting home now. He gave her a half-hearted wave and turned to leave. Ochako reached out, but stopped herself from keeping him from walking away. Wait. Is there anything I can do? The boy stopped and looked back at her, giving her that same fake smile. I'm okay. But thank you for checking on me. I hope I haven't taken too much of your time. I really should be going home. And with one last little wave, the boy was gone. Ochako didn't move from her spot for several minutes even after she'd lost sight of the boy. Even when she finally did move, she felt numb to the world around her. She reached her apartment and went about cooking and eating her dinner in silence. By the time she had gotten ready for bed, her guilt over her inaction still continued to eat away at her. I should have done something. Anything else besides just hiding like that. Ochako looked up at her darkened ceiling. A few glow-in-the-dark star stickers dotted it, giving her her own constellation to watch. I should have made sure he got home all right. Letting him leave like that wasn't right. She rolled over trying to get comfortable. Her sheets felt rough and cold. I wonder if he goes to the same school I'm going to. Ochako's eyelids started to feel heavy at last. If I see him again, I should see if he wants to be friends. She yawned. I should at least learn his name. The next day, Izuku woke up feeling sore. Not surprisingly, considering the beating he took yesterday. Fortunately, he had been able to play it off to his mother as him tripping while at the park. He had by that point removed most of the evidence that he had been hit with one of Katsuki's explosions. Mostly by picking away the burnt portions of his clothes. With a sigh, he quickly got dressed into his school uniform and had his breakfast. Giving his mother a quick hug goodbye, Izuku made his way to school. Absently, as he got closer to school, he scanned the students around him. Wondering if that girl from yesterday was around, but that was wishful thinking. He had a pretty good idea of the students in his age group, and he had never seen her before. Reaching his school, Izuku followed the rest of his year to the opening ceremony, though he paid little attention to it. Halfway through, he had caught sight of Katsuki and was now making sure when they were dismissed that he would be able to slip away without catching the eye of the explosive teen. When the students were dismissed, Izuku quietly made his way to class and his desk. With any luck, he'll make it through the day without getting Katsuki's attention. Hoping that, at the very least, they would be in different classes. Would rather not have a repeat of yesterday so soon. Even if I did meet that nice girl. I wish I'd at least asked her about her name. Reaching down, Izuku began unpacking his bag when he heard the chair next to him getting pulled out. While he was looking for his pencils, he heard the person next to him speak up. "Hi. Looks like we'll be sitting next to each other this year. I'm Uraraka Ochako." Izuku gulped. "I'm sitting next to a girl. And she's already talking to me? Better say something, or she might think I'm weird." Sitting back up, Izuku tried to return her polite greeting. "Hi, I'm Midoriya." Izuku's greeting was suddenly cut short as the girl gave out a startled gasp. "It's you! The boy from the park." Izuku was too stunned to reply. "The nice girl is in my class. The nice girl is in my class. The nice girl is in my class. And sitting right next to me." Ochako couldn't believe her luck. All last night she felt so guilty after not only doing nothing to help this boy after he had been attacked, but also just letting him walk off without at least checking if he had needed help to get home. But here he is. You don't get second chances like this every day, Ochako. Go be his friend. Hey, so I really wanted to apologize to you. That shocked Izuku enough to get him out of his endless train of thought. Huh, apologize for what, Uraraka? You went out of your way to see if I was okay. No one else has ever been that nice to me before. I'm really grateful. Ochako tilted her head, confused. No one's been that nice to you? What about your friends? Izuku looked down. I don't really have friends. It can be a little dangerous, honestly. Since I'm Kaken's favorite target, people are too afraid to be near me. Kaken? Who's that? And dangerous? What do you mean? Wait, does it have anything to do with? Are you kidding me? I'm in the same class as shitty Deku? God damn it. Ochako watched as Izuku paled and seemed to try and disappear into his chair. Ochako turned to find the source of the outburst and almost swallowed her tongue. Him. Why is that jerk here? Ochako watched as the blonde made his way through the classroom and stood before Izuku's desk. When Izuku didn't look up, he slammed his hand down onto the desk, a small puff of smoke billowing from his palm. This immediately got Izuku's attention as he jolted right back up. Kaken. Gee, good morning. How are you? Ochako watched as a dark sneer crossed Kaken's face. How am I? I find out you are in the same class as me, Deku, and you ask me how I am? I'm sorry. It's bad enough we have to be in the same school, but now I have to look at your sorry face every damn day for the next year. Several students started to laugh. Going to the same school, many of them had watched Katsuki and Izuku throughout the past couple of years, so they were already familiar with their relationship. Getting a show this early in the morning was always quite funny to them. A few pointed and snickered. Whispers of getting to see Deku get blown up were already spreading. Ochako didn't miss this. Even as she watched, the small boy tried more and more to vanish from the wrath that was being aimed at him. "I'm sorry." "Is that all you can say?" Katsuki's hands popped, making Izuku flinch back. "Though I suppose someone as worthless as you Deku can't really say anything else, huh? A worthless nobody, with a worthless name and an even more worthless quirk. Just looking at you." Ochako's chair clattered to the floor as she stood up in a flash of anger and shoved the blonde back, putting herself between him and Izuku. The laughter in the class suddenly died down. The blonde was clearly taken aback at first. Ochako guessed no one had stood up to the bully before. He quickly recovered though, and snarled at Ochako. "You want a problem, round face? Are you gonna be Deku's little protector?" Ochako's eye twitched. "Round? I don't know what your problem is, Kaken, but you need to back off, now." The blonde blinked before looking past her towards Izuku. "Hey Deku. Why are you telling other people the damned nickname?" "I'm sorry. It just sorta slipped out." "Listen here, round face, it's Bakugou Katsuki. Don't call me that nickname again. Now get out of my way. I'm not done with Deku yet." Katsuki raised a hand up and let off a few small explosions to scare her off. Ochako however didn't budge and returned Katsuki's stare. "You think you're the only one here with a quirk? I wasn't able to protect Midoriya yesterday. I hid while this jerk hurt him. Heroes don't do that. They stand up for those who can't." Katsuki didn't back down, but he was now giving her a good look. Looking for any tell or hint as to what her quirk was. "And what can you do, huh? I doubt you got anything that can hold a candle to me, you worthless extra." Ochako didn't falter and shot back, "Care to test that?" The whole class seemed to be holding their breath. Izuku actually was holding his breath. Is this really happening? Is this nice girl actually standing up to Kaken? No one's ever done that for me before. Heck, even I don't do that unless I'm feeling really stupid. She's. Oh wow. And her fingers. I saw the pads when she helped me up yesterday. Are they part of her quirk? What even is her quirk? She's seen Kaken's. Does she have some kind of counter to his explosions? At some point, Izuku had stopped thinking to himself and started to mumble his thoughts out loud. The collective class slowly turned their attention from the all but unheard of battle of wills happening between Katsuki and Ochako towards Izuku instead. Ochako glanced back at him, slightly perplexed, while Katsuki groaned in annoyance. "Great, and there he goes again. I'm done with this. Would rather be taking these stupid classes than have to deal with him when he goes into a mumble storm." Katsuki turned away and sat at his desk. Ochako blinked a few times before slowly sitting down herself. And releasing the breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. Strangely, she swore everyone else around her had moved their desks a little bit away. Guess they want to be clear of the blast range. When she turned to see if Izuku was alright, she was a little taken aback. Why is he looking at me like that?" Izuku had stopped mumbling and seemed to realize that Katsuki had left to go to his seat. Meaning this nice girl had not only stood up for him, but had managed to do it without getting blown up. That never happened. So he was doing the only thing his brain could think of doing. Stare. Stare in wonder. Stare in amazement. Stare in unfiltered admiration. He was also about to cry. That was amazing. Ochako nervously rubbed the back of her head. It wasn't that big of a deal, really. Most bullies will back down when you stand up to them. Kaken normally just blows people up, Izuku stated. A little too matter-of-factly for Ochako's liking. Is that what happened to you yesterday, Deku? Izuku flinched. That's not actually my name. But yeah, Kaken needed to let off some steam yesterday. I just happened to be in the blast range, I guess. Oh, I'm sorry, everyone else was kinda saying it when Bakugou was acting like a jerk. Yeah. My name is Midoriya Izuku. When you mess with the kanji, you get Deku. The one who can't do anything. It fits me to a T. It really stuck after he saw how bad my quirk is. Ochako frowned. She had honestly thought the name had sounded cute. Actually, this might be a good chance to def on that jerk a little. No, Deku sounds a lot like Dekairu. Gives me the feeling of I can do it. Out of the corner of her eye she saw Bakugou turn towards the two of them with a look that she guessed was half angry, and half offended. Guess he didn't like me taking that one away, huh, she thought smugly. Course, if Midoriya doesn't like it. Izuku felt his face flush. For such a long time, that name had always been something negative. And yet, she hears it just now, and she turns it on its head. I can do it. I can do it. I can. I'm Deku. Are you sure? It was an insult before. Izuku looked away bashfully. Hearing it like that kinda makes me really happy. So, I'm okay with it. Soon their teacher arrived and class began. It was a typical first day. Syllabuses were passed out, and the teacher droned on. Soon enough, the students were instructed to grab their textbooks and work on some of the problems from the first chapter. Bending down to pull out her textbook, Ochako accidentally bumped into her desk, jolting her pencil off. It rolled just out of reach up against the shoe of the student in front of her. When the boy looked down and saw the pencil, he looked back over to Ochako. Ochako quietly pointed towards it apologetically, but the boy tensed up and quickly turned back around, lightly kicking the pencil further away. Wow, does that Bakugou have everyone here so wrapped around his finger, these guys won't deal with me because I stood up for Deku? Well, forget them, then. Before she could decide to either forget the pencil and find a new one, or just get up and grab it herself, she watched in wonder as a faint green glow surrounded it and then, all on its own, began to roll backwards before it floated up to her. Reaching up, she began to pluck the pencil out of the air, but stopped to give it a little inquisitive stare. Okay, since when do pencils do that? On a hunch she glanced over at Izuku and saw that he had his hand out like he was holding something invisible. When Ochako didn't immediately take the pencil back, he looked over at her and sheepishly moved his hand a little, depositing her pencil back onto her desk. Sorry, Uraraka, Izuku whispered. I should have asked permission to use my quirk like that on something of yours. The gears in her head finally started turning again, and Ochako just smiled at him before whispering back, No, it's okay. I was just surprised, that's all. Izuku smiled before returning to his own textbook. Ochako followed suit, not wanting to have their teacher call them out on the first day. Deku can move things with his mind? That's really cool. Before Ochako was able to start working on the chapter assigned to them, however, she remembered something from earlier. Wait, didn't he say his quirk was useless? He can move things with his mind. Who sees that and says it's useless? Slowly, her gaze turned upward till she was drilling a hole into the back of Katsuki. Actually, I don't really need to guess, do I? As the day went on, Izuku couldn't help but steal glances over at the girl next to him. A few times she even caught him looking, but she would only smile and give him a small wave before going back to her studies. What am I supposed to do in a situation like this? It's been such a long time since actually, I don't think anything like this has ever happened before. Deku was interrupted as the teacher dismissed the class for lunch. Normally, this would be when he would quickly scurry off and find a quiet place to eat and work on his hero analysis notebook. Yet instead, he was still sitting at his desk. Ochako was digging through her bag, looking for her lunch, he guessed. Uraraka? There was no way this was gonna happen, Izuku thought. But to be fair, a lot of things had happened that shouldn't have happened either. Would you like to have lunch with me? Sure, I'd love to, Ochako replied cheerfully. I was actually gonna ask if you knew any good spots to eat here. Yeah, there's a nice place up on the roof I've been using for a while now, actually. Izuku picked up his bag and started to lead Ochako out of the class. Izuku was grateful that Katsuki only gave them a parting glare. It seemed he wasn't bored enough to want to deal with them at the moment. Or get seen by the teacher going after them. Leading Ochako up to the roof, Izuku found a couple of the folding chairs left up there and brought them over. Here you go, Uraraka. Thank you, Deku. This is actually a really nice spot. Yeah, I'm lucky most of the other students don't bother coming up here. Both sat down and began to eat. Soon though, Ochako began to wonder what she could talk to Izuku about. She wanted to make it a happy topic at the very least. It was a little disturbing to her that most ideas she came up with, she didn't think would go over too well. What's the school like? What do you and your friends do for fun? Most of her thoughts followed this line of thinking. It should be easy, but just from this morning, she doubted he had many pleasant experiences here. However, Izuku surprised her by being the one to finally break the silence and ask her something. Uraraka, is it okay if I ask you a question? Sure, I don't mind. Well, Izuku started, this morning when you stood up for me, you got Kaken to back down cause you mentioned your quirk. What actually is your quirk? Oh, let me show you. Ochako picked up the chair she had been sitting on, and with a touch, activated her quirk on it. Showing off a little, she delicately made a show of balancing it on a finger. When I touch something with all my fingers, I can turn off its gravity. Izuku was amazed. Wow, you can control gravity. That's such an amazing quirk. Ochako nervously rubbed the back of her head as she lowered the chair down. With it floating only a little off the ground, she put her fingers together. And, release. The chair landed with a soft thud. Izuku reached out and nudged it with his foot, confirming that it was indeed heavy again. So, when you touch something with your fingers, it loses its gravity. And when you touch your fingers together, it comes back. Ochako sat back down and picked up her lunch bento. Yep, that's pretty much it. You are so cool. Ochako felt her cheeks heat up slightly as she waved Izuku off. It's not that amazing, honestly. And if I go over my weight limit, I get really sick to my stomach. What's your weight limit? I've never put an exact number to it, but from when I was moving stuff around construction sites with my dad, I'd say it's a couple of tons. Give or take. Izuku's jaw dropped slightly and Ochako could swear she saw him using his chopstick like a pen, writing down everything she had been saying. Tons? You can lift tons? You have control over gravity and can lift stuff like cars with it. That's totally amazing. If you got Kaken with that, I don't think he'd be able to do anything after that. If he tried using his quirk, he'd probably just blast himself into a wall or ceiling. Or out a window, Ochako mumbled to herself. Izuku tilted his head slightly. Did you say something? Oh, nothing. Just talking to myself, is all. I'm not used to someone praising my quirk so much. What about you, Deku? Could you tell me about your quirk? Ochako frowned slightly as she watched Izuku's own look of wonder fade, and he looked down at his lunch. Picking at it with his chopsticks. Before Ochako could decide to apologize for asking about something that might have been a sore point for him, she watched as a faint green aura surrounded one of the chopsticks he had been using. Slowly, Izuku held out his hand, the chopstick floating a few inches above his palm. Ochako stared at it for a bit before looking back up at Izuku. She almost missed it, but she could see a faint green glow around him as well. You can move stuff with your mind, then? Izuku kept his eyes on his hand. Yeah. Psychokinesis is my quirk. Ochako tilted her head. Is that like telekinesis? It's the same thing, really. Just a different word for it. I think the doctor was being a little overly dramatic when giving it a name. He was weird. Well, I think you have an incredible quirk. Izuku's head snapped up to see Ochako beaming at him. Ha! Deku, I have to touch something to use my quirk. You can make stuff float just by looking at it. That's really cool. Izuku flushed, his concentration broke and the chopstick fell back into his hand. Quickly he covered his face to hide his reddening cheeks. No, it really isn't. I can't lift anything big like you can. I'm lucky if I can pull my shoes out of my closet on a good day without getting a massive headache. But even still. Even still? Izuku let his arms fall back to his sides. Promise you won't laugh? I promise, Deku. After a few seconds, Izuku reached into his bag, pulled out a notebook and handed it to Ochako, who looked at the cover. Hero Analysis for the Future? Number 13? Opening the book, Ochako was blown away by what she saw. Page after page was filled with detailed sketches and notes on different heroes. Quirks, battle techniques, support items and so on. The amount of detail in the book was shocking. All this, are you studying heroes because you want to be one? Izuku nodded. Yeah. Even if my quirk is bad. Even if I'm useless. I still. Ochako watched as the timid look faded slightly from Izuku, replaced with one of determination. I still want to become a hero. When this school year is over, I plan on applying to UA. I want to help people, just like All Might does. Izuku waited for the laugh, or maybe even a chuckle. Maybe for her to say it was a stupid dream. Anything that would fall in line with what everyone else has told him around here. I'm here to apply to UA too. Izuku blinked and looked at Ochako, startled. Huh? As with Izuku before, Ochako now wore a face filled with determination. I just moved into an apartment in the area because I'm also going to apply to UA. I'm going to become a hero too. You moved here just to apply? Ochako nodded. That's right. My dad was able to get me a place close enough that I'd have no problem going to UA. We had no idea if we'd be able to get such a great deal on an apartment again, so I took it. This year, I'm going to make sure I'm ready for the entrance exam and make my parents proud. With a quirk like yours, I'm sure you'll have no problem passing. Ochako smiled. Thanks. But it's not just the practical exam I have to be ready for. There's a written test too. Honestly, that has me a little more nervous than the other part of the test. Ochako's eyes drifted to the notebook she was still holding. Hey, now there's an idea. Hey Deku, why don't we work together? You huh? Izuku wasn't sure he had heard her right. Let's work together to get into UA. We can study and train together to get ourselves ready for the exam. Izuku was trying to wrap his head around what Ochako had just said. You'd want to train with me? But are you sure that's a good idea? I'd hate to hold you back. Ochako held up his notebook. Deku, you don't write 13 books to help yourself become a hero in the future and not put them to use, right? That's dedication towards a goal. And when you talked about getting into UA, I could see you meant it. She actually believes I could do it? That we could do it? Izuku took a breath before he reached out his hand. Okay then, let's do it. Ochako beamed and took Izuku's hand in a handshake. Right, you and I will pass those exams and become heroes. Great. So what's your plan for our training? Ochako blinked instantly and looked away sheepishly. Oh? I haven't actually thought that far ahead yet. Izuku almost fell out of his chair as he started to laugh. Ochako frowned and playfully used Izuku's notebook to bonk him on the head. Hey, don't laugh. I only just moved here. I still need to figure out what I can even do here to get ready before I come up with a plan. What about you? You must have a training idea if you want to go to UA. It was Izuku's turn to turn away. That's actually a really good point. Okay, first order of business. We need to put together a game plan. Before Ochako could give a retort to Izuku over pots and kettles, the lunch bell rang, letting them know that lunch was over and saving the poor boy. Quickly the two put away the chairs and grabbed their belongings. As they made their way back to class, a thought came to Izuku. Hey Uraraka? When you said your dad found you an apartment, did you mean you live by yourself? Yeah. It's a student apartment, so it's not that big a deal. Izuku frowned. If she only just moved in, it has to be lonely, right? Uraraka, if you'd like, would you come over to my place and have dinner with me and my mom? Ochako looked at Izuku, surprised by the offer. Izuku quickly added, I mean, only if you want to, of course. I just thought that maybe it's a little lonely for you right now, is all. Of course, I'm only assuming that. You might like the quiet. And I don't want to overstep any boundaries or anything, so it's completely up to you. As Izuku trailed off, Ochako smiled back at him. I'd love to, Deku. You're right, it's a little lonely for me. Eating dinner really isn't the same without someone to talk to. Are you sure it'll be okay with your mom though? Oh, let me give her a quick call. Hurriedly, Deku pulled out his phone and dialed his mother, trying not to think that he was trying to get permission to bring a girl home. Friend over. She just happens to be a girl, is all. Mom? Yeah, it's me. No, I'm fine. I wanted to know if I could bring a friend over for dinner? Ochako laughed as Izuku pulled the phone slightly away. She could swear she could even hear some excited sounds come from it. Okay, Mom, thank you. I'll let her know then. This time Izuku yanked his phone fully away, holding it at arm's length from his ear. Ochako could now hear his mother screaming from the phone. Okay Mom, thanks. I have to get to class now. See you later. Izuku quickly said before hanging up. He looked over at Ochako and, trying to keep a straight face, said, she said it was fine. Ochako raised an eyebrow. That seemed a little loud for fine. Oh, well, you see, I don't really bring people over very often, or ever, actually, so she got a little, excited. As Izuku talked, his straight face melted away into an embarrassed blush. Ochako smiled, but didn't push for details about the issue, not wanting to embarrass her new friend anymore. Turning a corner, the two were almost at the classroom but found their path blocked by Katsuki and a few of his pals. Hey Deku, where'd you run off to? You and I need to finish our talk from this morning. Izuku gave a startled leap and came to a quick stop. Ochako, however, kept walking forward and right up to Katsuki. You got something to say to me, round face? Her smile never leaving her face, she casually placed her hands onto Katsuki's shoulders. Then, to the amazement of all, and bewilderment of Katsuki, she picked him up and pushed him to the other side of the hallway where he softly bounced off the wall, floating a few feet off the ground. Turning around, and ignoring the sudden string of expletives and flailing from the boy, she calmly said to Izuku, come on. We don't want to be late. Izuku quickly followed after Ochako, and only when they were both seated did Ochako put her hands together. The screaming from Katsuki suddenly turned into a startled yell followed quickly by a solid thud. A series of explosions echoed in the classroom from the hallway before the door slammed open. You bitch! The classroom tensed, ready for the inevitable attack Katsuki was bound to unleash. However, the arrival of the teacher quietly put everyone at ease. Katsuki wouldn't dare attack with a teacher in the classroom. Right? Katsuki's hands smoked as he glared daggers at both Ochako and Deku, before finally, with a swift turn, he stomped back to his desk. The rest of the day passed without incident, and as luck would have it, Katsuki had been asked by the teacher to carry some papers for him to the teacher's offices. So both Izuku and Ochako quickly gathered their things and left. Though not before the two guys in Katsuki's group gave off some parting remarks. Never seen Bakugou explode a girl before. That's gonna be a hell of a show. And you, Deku? You're gonna get it so bad when this chick isn't around to be your little shield anymore. Ochako frowned, and as she and Izuku passed by the two of them, she turned suddenly, hands reaching out like she was about to use her quirk on them. It was a bluff and she pulled back way before she even got close, but neither boy cared. Both had leapt back, getting far away from her. Ochako looked at both of them, head tilted to the side. Thought so. She turned back to Izuku and gave him a bright smile. Come on, Deku. The walk to Izuku's home was thankfully uneventful. Izuku had been worried that Katsuki may have decided to chase after him when he was done with the teacher's errand, but fortunately his worries had been for nothing. Though now at his apartment, he began to feel nervous for completely different reasons. I can't let her see my room. I think I'll die if she does. Taking out his keys, Izuku opened the door and welcomed Ochako in. Please make yourself at home. I'll go find my mom and... Before he could finish though, Inko Midoriya came into the hallway with a huge smile to welcome the teens. Hello, it's so nice to meet you. You must be the friend Izuku told me about on the phone. Ochako bowed slightly. Yes, I'm Uraraka Ochako. Thank you so much for letting me come over. I hope it isn't too much of a bother. Oh, you are so polite. It's not a bother at all. I'm actually very happy to see my dear Izuku making friends. Dinner is almost ready. Izuku, why don't you take Uraraka to the table? I'll have everything brought out in just a few minutes. Both put their school bags to the side and Izuku led Ochako to the dining table. Sitting down, Ochako could smell the dinner Inko had prepared. It smells wonderful, ma'am. Mom is a really good cook. Oh, what are we having, Mom? Inko smiled as she finished getting things done from the kitchen. I thought we'd have a nice hot pot. Yummy. Izuku beamed happily. Soon Inko brought the large pot in and the three began to eat. While they talked, Inko learned of Ochako's living situation. She was impressed that she was mature enough at her age to be living alone. She was also impressed to hear the reason behind her move. You're applying to U.A? I hadn't realized I had another future hero in my house. Ochako blushed slightly, while Izuku nodded excitedly. Actually Mom, Uraraka and I are gonna start getting ready for the entrance exam together. Inko was a little surprised to hear that. Really? That sounds like a wonderful idea. I must say I really am impressed that you two only just met and you both are taking your futures so seriously. You two must have had a great first impression of each other. Yes, ma'am. Midoriya showed me his notebook when he talked about his dream. It was actually really inspiring. I could tell he puts a lot of focus in his studies on heroics. Inko nodded. You should see the whole set. He has them all on his bookshelf in his room. Oh, I would love to see them. Izuku groaned and shrunk down into his chair somewhat. Actually my room isn't, ready for visitors. But I could go get them if you wanted. But Izuku, didn't you clean your room just a few days ago? Don't tell me you got it messy already? No, it's clean, it's just, Inko gave her son a sudden knowing look. Oh, is it your All Might collection? Have you not had a chance to get all those collectibles dusted yet? MOM. Inko laughed at her panicked son before turning to Ochako. My boy is a huge All Might fan. He has so much memorabilia and collectibles. Really, I think that's really cool, actually. Ochako said, giving Izuku a reassuring smile. I actually have some figures of my favorite hero 13. 13 is a great hero. I've read about some of her rescue missions. Rescue heroes are so cool. Ochako nodded in agreement. 13 is actually my inspiration. I want to be a hero just as great as she is. The two went back and forth, comparing their favorite heroes in their fields for some time. Inko watched the two and felt her heart warm up. It was so good to see her son having so much fun with someone. Soon both had taken a small break to eat some more, and Inko herself took the chance to talk. So, Inko began, how'd you two end up meeting? I assume you're both in the same class? Deku nodded. Yeah. She stood up to some bullies this morning. It was really cool. We actually met yesterday, but we didn't get each other's names. I'm actually really glad I got to meet him again. I felt really bad about just letting him go home on his own without making sure he was okay. Izuku tensed, but already knew he couldn't stop what was coming. Oh, you saw him fall at the park? My poor boy can be clumsy sometimes. Ochako blinked, confused. Fall? Yes, Izuku came home last night all scuffed up. He had said he was out at the park and accidentally had a little tumble. Right, Izuku? Inko looked over at her son and found him looking away from her. Ochako looked between the two and it suddenly clicked what had just happened. Oh, she doesn't know? Inko frowned. Izuku, honey? After a tense silence, Izuku finally spoke up. I didn't want you to get worried, is all, Mom. It was just some guys from school. Inko reached out and put a hand on his shoulder. Oh, Izuku, you should have told me. I'm your mother. I'm supposed to worry about you. And take care of these things. She then looked over at Ochako. The bullies you stood up to. Were they the same ones from the park? Ochako gave an affirmative nod. Yeah, it was the same guy from our class. Inko caught the singular description. Guy? It was just one boy giving Izuku trouble. Oh. It was Bakugou again, wasn't it? Inko slumped slightly in her seat. Of course it was him. And he's in your class this year? Maybe I should give the school another call? Izuku sat up again and waved the idea off, putting on a brave smile for his mother. It's okay, Mom. Besides, if they wouldn't do anything the last few times you called, I doubt they'd do anything now. It pained Inko that she couldn't argue with her son. Ochako frowned when she saw that both of them seemed willing to accept the whole situation. Why won't the school do something? Izuku sighed. Ever since Kaken got his quirk, everyone around him has given him so much praise. Which is fair, it's an amazing quirk. And because it's so amazing, everyone knows that when he applies to UA, he's bound to get in. So no one really wants to be the one that gets in his way. Ochako's jaw dropped. He's applying to UA? Seriously? Yeah, he's aced all the mock exams and everything, too. Ochako could not believe her ears. The whole thing was starting to make her fume. How could someone like that Bakugou not only get a free pass on being a dangerous bully, but also be getting ready to become a hero? Inko looked over at the angered Ochako. So, when Izuku said you stood up to some bullies, he meant to say you stood up to that Bakugou? Then let me just say, thank you so very much. It means the world to me, knowing my Izuku has someone who's willing to stand up for him. Ochako felt her anger evaporate somewhat, and she started to blush. I just couldn't stand by and let it happen in front of me like that. I didn't do anything special. Izuku shook his head. No, it was incredible. You standing up to Kaken really made you look like a hero to me. I agree with my son. It sounds like UA has a great hero on her way at the end of this year. A hero? Me? Now Ochako was blushing heavily. Getting praise now from not only Izuku, but his mother as well? Ochako covered her face with her hands, trying to hide her blush. Unfortunately, doing so while in her state of mind, she forgot to make sure to keep her pinkies out, and activated her quirk on herself and floated above the table. Oh my! Wow, I didn't know you could use your quirk on yourself, Uraraka. Ochako now had another reason to be embarrassed as both Midoriyas helped her back down to the ground. With dinner done, and after helping Inko clean up, Ochako was getting ready to depart for her apartment. Are you sure you don't want me to call you a cab, dear? Ochako shook her head. No, it's okay. It's not that far, really. I'll be fine. Inko then handed her a small bag. Here, you can take some of the leftovers for yourself. Actually, before you go. If you'd like, it's not that different cooking for 3 rather than 2. So instead of eating all by yourself, you are more than welcome to have dinner with us. Izuku nodded excitedly. Yeah, that's a great idea, Mom. Ochako was stunned by the offer. Is that really okay? I don't want to become a burden. Inko waved her off. Of course you're not a burden. If the two of you are going to be getting ready for Udata together, it'd probably be easier to be able to spend more time together for studying and the like anyway, so I'm sure you'd be over here regardless. Plus, I truly want to thank you for standing up for my Izuku. Ochako was still stunned. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. After saying her goodbyes to Inko, Ochako left the apartment, Izuku walking with her till she left the apartment grounds. So, Uraraka, what do you think we should do first? For our training, I mean. I guess the first thing we need to do is find some gyms and such. I have to think there are plenty around here. We can look around and see what we can find. Izuku agreed. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. And for the written part, I have most of the books to prep for the test. I can make you some study notes that you can work with if you'd like. I'll also browse online and see what else is out there we can work on. That sounds like a great idea. Reaching the edge of the apartments, Izuku waved goodbye to Ochako till she was out of sight. Walking back, for the first time since he could remember, Izuku was looking forward to the next day of school. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 2. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.